The video you are about to see contains graphic images of a Yamaha jet boat being winterized. Please proceed at your own risk. The creators of this video maintain no responsibility for any mishaps or mayhem you may cause attempting these techniques.
I'm Captain Leon.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Captain Ken.
And we're here to show you how to winterize your boat New York style. The 12 weeks of boating has finally come to an end.
Or 12 days of boating in my case.
Yeah, it goes pretty quick. And we're going to show you a few steps now on how to winterize your boat for the deep cold of the north. This ain't like your boys down south where you just spray a little fogging oil in there, blow out some water and throw on a cover. We got some serious things we got to take care of here. And our methods have been derived from Yamaha publications, our dealers' recommendations, reading stuff on the forum, listening to Will, and perhaps even some good old mechanical know-how. You ready, Ken?
I'm ready. You ready?
I'm ready. If you don't like what we're doing here, hey, forget about it.
Forget about it.
Ooh.
Hey.
Now this is a real important part of winterizing the boat. You got to make sure that your fuel is stabilized to last the winter. That fuel is going to be sitting in there for quite some time. It's recommended to have a full tank. You don't want to leave any areas of the tank that doesn't have gas in it because that can encourage moisture, and we don't want moisture mixing with the gas. But the best way to do it is to use some Stabil. That's right, Stabil. This is marine version Stabil. And all you have to do is read the directions. And I know folks don't like to read, but you really need to read. Figure out how much you're supposed to put in there. Mix it right in with your gasoline. It's recommended you put this in first, then you go to the gas station. You let the gas mix it all up as you're filling up your tank, and then you're good to go. You have a topped off gas tank mixed with Stabil. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is warm up the engine a little bit. But before we did that, we removed the air cleaner box by loosening the metal clamp and articulating it out. And as you can see, here it is right here. Okay, the filter's nice and clean. That's something you'd probably want to change if the filter was dirty. Alright, we're ready to start her up right now. And at this stage, we're starting it just on regular garden hose water. While it's running, we'll let it warm up a bit. And then Ken is going to start to shoot some fogging oil right inside to that air intake track, okay, that we showed you earlier. Alright, here we go. We'll let it warm up a little bit. I'm gonna shut it, okay. Because you got the water off, right? Yeah. Alright, so what we've done at this point is we've warmed up the engine just on the regular garden hose. And while the engine was warming up, we eventually started to introduce some fogging oil. We recommend only using Yamaha brand fogging oil. We sprayed it in through the air intake, we heard the motor rev up a little bit, cough a little bit, and we did that for at least a couple of minutes. We then disconnected the water, blew out any residual water, and shut it down just for a moment. Now what we're about to do is introduce some marine antifreeze through the cooling system of the engine. The theory is if there's any water left in the engine at all that could freeze and cause problems, the introduction of the antifreeze will aid in that. So we've developed here a little system. We have a pump, yep, $15, Harbor Freight. Pretty cheap, pretty effective. We have 12-volt connections, which we're going to hook right to the battery of the boat. And we even put a little built-in switch on ours, but you don't have to get that fancy. We're going to put the antifreeze into our bucket. We're going to pour it right in. We're going to put the pump inside our bucket. And then we're going to turn our pump on. And through the connection, the same way that you do it on the garden hose, we're going to introduce the antifreeze through the engine system under equivalent pressure as your garden hose. As soon as we see that that's going, we're going to introduce more fogging oil. And at the end, as soon as we're out of antifreeze, we're going to blow that out as well, just to get any residual liquid out of the engine that we can. And at that point, we'll conclude fogging at the same time. There's one more step though. There's a hose in the back of the engine that we're going to clamp off. And that's the hose that the water comes in from the jet pump. The jet pump has an intake that takes the water under the pressure of the jet and forces that water through the engine for cooling. These motors don't have a traditional water pump. So we're going to clamp that off. We're going to get you a nice tight shot of how we clamped it off and what we're clamping off. And that's just to keep the antifreeze flowing through the engine and to preserve it till we get it to go through all the channels of the engine and not to necessarily escape out the back through the intake of the jet pump. You'll see what we're about to do. Alright, so we're here at the very back of the engine, and what we've done is we've gone down to the intake water line where the water comes in from the jet pump, and we just clamped it off with an extended reach vice grip with some rubber protective coating on the teeth, just to ensure that when we pump the antifreeze through and it comes through this red line, it all flows into the engine and we don't lose too much of it going backwards out through the jet pump. Incidentally, you really ought to have this little tool on board, because if you ever get towed, if you're disabled, the rush of water moving past the jet pump, if you exceed, I believe, 10 miles per hour or so, could force its way through that line into your engine. So having a tool like this on board is essential. It'll clamp off that line, and it'll ensure no water gets introduced to the engine while the engine is off during a disability. Alright, we're going to now start it up and get some antifreeze flowing through it. So we're connected to the battery now, and our pump's ready to go. So once we get the motor started, we'll flip our switch and we'll start pumping this antifreeze right into the motor. Okay, we're ready to roll. We got all 3 gallons of antifreeze into our bucket. We primed it a little bit to make sure that the antifreeze flowed through our tube. We're about to introduce that into the engine. When the bucket's nearing halfway down toward the bottom, Ken's going to start introducing some more of the Yamaha lube, store right engine fogging oil, and he's going to try to cough the motor a little bit and make sure we really lubricate the inside of the track of the motor there, the air intake track. So here we go. First we're going to start her up. You all set, Ken?
10 forward.
All right. Motor's running, and here we go. Pumping antifreeze. And she's going down. Yep. Alright, you want to give it some fogging oil before we run out of antifreeze here? we're done with antifreeze. Alright, hit it. Shut it. Okay, and there's our non-tox antifreeze draining out of the motor. Alright, so now that we've taken care of the fogging oil through the air intake, we've reinstalled the air box, we've let the motor cool a little bit, we're good with antifreeze flowing through the motor, and now we're going to shoot some fogging oil into what we call the internals of the engine. Ken has removed the high output cover on the top of the Yamaha motor. He's now using a 10mm socket to remove the coil packs, pull those out, we'll pull the plugs out, and we're going to be shooting some fogging oil for about 5 seconds as per the Yamaha service manual into each cylinder. Okay, so as you can see, Ken has removed the coil packs from the top of the engine. We have just 4 holes there, and he's removed the spark plugs with a spark plug wrench. He now has the Yamaha fogging oil that we used just a few moments ago to shoot into the intake track. And now Ken will tell you a little bit about what he's about to do.
Okay, the first thing to consider is to make sure that your tube is firmly fastened into the nozzle here. We had trouble before where the thing was popping out very easily, so we really had to be deliberate, force it directly in there. So hold it and try to get a little twist and turn, and then test it. You know, yank on it a little bit, make sure it stays. So as a good practice, I would suggest actually holding the nozzle as you're spraying in there, okay? So make sure you get a good aim in there, hold it, and spray. Alright, and let it settle. Number 2. And number 3. You can actually hear it filling as you spray. And the back one's a little tricky, just to make sure you get it set in the center there. Alright. And the motor, top of the cylinders, should be nicely coated with fogging oil. Okay, so one final step we're going to complete before we put the plugs back in. We want to make sure that oil gets circulated around in the combustion chamber, therefore letting all the intake and exhaust valves get coated as well. It might be a step a lot of people don't think is necessary, but here again in the deep north, we want to make sure everything's covered for the winter. So to save a step, some might consider it lazy, I did not disconnect the coil packs. Also, for organization purposes, I left everything on there. So we want to turn the engine, but we don't want to send spark to the engine. So to take care of that, we simply disconnect the lanyard. You can take a look over here. The lanyard is disconnected. As you know, if that gets pulled while you're underway, the motor shuts down. However, we will still get the starter to work. So we're just going to briefly turn it for a couple of seconds to get the circulation. And if you notice, we have a towel covering the top of the motor because the spark plugs are out of the motor. Okay, and that should complete the circulation of the oil in the combustion chamber.
Now Ken, when you put those plugs back in and you put the boots back in, do you lubricate them at all? Or?
Yes, if you take a look here, we're going to use anti-seize, little anti-seize back on the threads. It's always good practice to do when you're rethreading your plugs back into an aluminum head. As you can see, there's leftover residual, but I'm just going to put a little fresh coat on there. And then also, we don't have it here, but dielectric gel is recommended. You could coat this boot here with dielectric gel and put it back in there, and that'll just add another set of preservation protocols.
And at that point, I think we're safe to say, now that we've completely fogged the engine through the air intake, we've completely fogged it through the internals of the plug holes, we've run antifreeze through it, we blew that out. I think that this boat, at least from a mechanical standpoint with the engine, is fully winterized.
Yes, 10-4, roger that.
Alright, so in this segment, we're going to address the bilge pump. Is a key important factor in your boat. If you're like me, you keep a dry boat and the bilge never comes on. So it's a good idea to check it, clean it, and make sure it works. What we've done here is we've removed the air filter. Alright, so it gives us a little bit greater access. And we've taken the bilge pump and we've gone ahead and disconnected it from its base. Alright, so there's a blue base down there at the bottom. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that you clean it out thoroughly. Okay? And that you get all the debris out of there. Use a vacuum for that. And basically what you got to do to disconnect it is you got a couple of tabs right here on the top and on the bottom of the pump. You just squeeze those tabs and that'll pull right out of that permanent base. You just want to really get that clean. Let me also mention, so this is the screen that fits down into the very bottom, right in that blue base. And this is something you really want to clean and make sure you get all debris out of. What we'd like to do now is just test the pump, make sure it works. Okay, so we've gone ahead and put a Tupperware container down in here, and we're going to actually take the pump and just sit it into the water. And every 2 minutes, this automatic bilge pump should cycle and pump out any water. There she goes. Alright, we're just going to take a minute now to recap. What we've done is we've added fuel stabilizer into the fuel tank the last outing or the last 2 outings to make sure that really had an opportunity to flow through the fuel system, get into the engine properly. And then we began the winterization process of the engine itself using fogging oil. We wanted to shoot that fogging oil through the air intake. We shot it through the cylinder holes, the spark plug holes directly, and we took care of everything mechanically with the engine. We serviced the bilge pump, and we showed you that in the video as well. Now what we want to do is explain to you part 2, and that is just taking care of some other things that you need to do to winterize the boat besides the engine. We're going to show you a couple little video clips, a couple of photographs, but essentially this whole boat has been waxed. We cleaned the whole exterior, we cleaned underneath the boat, we went ahead, cleaned the windows, we serviced the vinyl, we cleaned the vinyl. We also went ahead and took the carpeting out, vacuumed the whole inside of the boat, and did everything we can to prepare it for a long winter. Also, any sharp edges that you see that might create a problem for your winter cover, you want to perhaps put some foam padding on that. That's always a good idea as well. And lastly, we're going to move into phase 3, which after the boat is all buttoned up and you have your cover on, we're going to take care of the trailer. And we're going to show you a few steps on how to do that as well, so then you can go on and light your fire and enjoy your winter. Alright, so here we are, and you probably have heard the word repurposing. Well, when you were younger, that meant you were wearing your big brother Johnny's clothes. That's repurposing. But here in New York, let me show you a new way to repurpose. We have here corks. That's right, a lot of wine drunken on the boat. And we have here Pellegrini Vineyards. That's a local vineyard here on Long Island, and Ecco Domani, one of our favorites. So here's what we do. We take the corks, and all we do is we stick them over there underneath the seat, and we do the same here, and we do that all around the boat. Any place that we want to encourage airflow. More air flowing in through your compartments, less chance of mold and mildew. And by the way, it should go without saying, you want to clean out all the compartments on the boat to have the most amount of air flow through. Once again, repurposing. Alright, so you probably want to take a few moments to clean the boat as much as you can before you put it away. As you can see here, we've pulled off the gas tank fiberglass lid. We have it leaning right over there. And you never know what you're going to find. I think we have a beer cap over here that slid behind. And we also have here some muck and mire. So you want to clean all this out. You want to keep it as clean as possible. Before you put the boat away for the winter. I also recommend, by the way, I know everybody has a difference of opinion, but down at the bottom in most of these areas of the boat, you'll find a plug similar to your drain plugs on the bottom of the hull in the back. I open them all up, That's why I want air ventilation to get through all the different compartments. You really want to encourage airflow. This keeps mold and mildew at bay. While we're underway during the course of the season, I usually keep all those plugs closed. Yeah. And you'll take a look at what we got. We've cleaned this up pretty good. Yeah, she's ready to put away. So like I said, folks, repurposing. It's a great word, and it makes use of things that you already have around the house for a second purpose. Take a look at this pipe insulation, for example. We keep this on our pipes here in New York because it gets cold. You got to keep your pipes from freezing in the house. Well, all you need to do is take a little bit of this foam and cut it and shape it and so forth. You can make yourself nice little plugs for your outlets. This is for the bilge, okay, where your bilge pump kicks out. And then you can make a little one right here for your jet pump flow indicator. Now what this does is this keeps the critters from crawling into the boat during the winter. You don't want critters in your boat during the winter. Although, here in New York, it's a bit overkill. We don't have a lot of critters living out in the winter. They're living inside with us. Alright, so we want to spend a few minutes now servicing our trailer. We have it in position where we want it, and we've taken the time to actually jack up the tires onto blocks. These are bias-ply tires. They are not radials. They can develop flat spots if you leave them in one position, and right now these tires are about 1 inch off the ground on both sides. So we're in real good shape now. They're actually free spinning, and what we're going to do is use a little CRC 656 spray. We want to spray any areas that we just wanted to maintain a coating over the winter. You know, our locks, our fittings, okay, all of our gears and our winch, any bolts. Just want to go around and give a general spray. I've already done this, and now what we want to do is we want to service the tires somewhat. Okay, so we are underneath the trailer right now. We have the wheel jacked up, and we're freewheeling, and you can see that the one area of the trailer that seems to develop the most rust, particularly here in a saltwater environment, is our leaf spring. Good idea before the winter to give all that a nice coating of CRC, and it'll do a good job toward protecting it in the winter. Alright, we're here at our wheel, and as you can see, it is freewheeling. What we want to do is we want to remove the rubber boot cap here that's on the bearing buddy. Sometimes it can be a little tough to get off due to suction and so forth, but as you can see, this is the bearing buddy. Let me clean it up here a little bit for you. Alright, and sometimes you get some water in here. I could see it's a little wet inside. Alright, you know, it could also be some grease that's liquefied from getting hot as the wheel spins. But the bottom line is there's a plate in here, okay? The plate is what the grease nipple is affixed to. And I can see that this plate is pretty far back in there. That plate should be more toward you to indicate that there's pressure on the spring. See, it's the spring inside that keeps the water out. It's pressure. So we're going to add a little grease to that now, attaching our grease gun, and you'll see the plate start to move out. Alright, so we got a lot in there. You know, we went a little overboard, but you get the idea. And we'll just clean this up a little bit. We could show you what we're talking about. Alright, so now you can see that the grease fitting, the nipple, is almost to the end, almost touching my finger. So this whole plate has pushed out. That means that there's pressure now on this spring, and that extra pressure is good. It keeps water out. We got a little grease oozing out because we went overboard a bit, but it's not a problem. All right, now at this point, we want to reinstall our cap, and then we want to take some CRC, all right, like we've been using, and we want to give a good coating on our lug nuts. All right, and it's probably a good idea come the spring or every once in a while to remove your lug nuts, remove your tire, make sure nothing's affixed to the hub, particularly if you're boating in salt water. All right, that pretty much does it as far as service to the wheels. Okay, now when it comes to your jet pump and all your components out here, good idea, spray everything with the CRC, give it a nice coating, okay? You want to do it all over, and that'll help toward protect it for the winter. And then you want to apply some grease, which we'll do in a moment here, to your shifting cables. That, you know, moves your gate up and down, as well as your steering left to right. Well, Yama peeps, that's a wrap, literally. We hope you've enjoyed this comprehensive video on how to winterize a Yamaha jet boat. On behalf of myself, Captain Leon, and my assistant, Captain Ken, hopefully these steps will give you some key pointers on what you can do to better winterize your boat. It's mid-October here in New York, and more than likely, these covers aren't coming off until mid-May. That's a long haul of ice, wind, snow, and misery. For now, we're going to light some of this firewood and try to stay warm. But you boys down south and other points in Florida and so forth, do us a favor. Enjoy boating on our behalf. I'm Captain Leon.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Captain Ken.
And the 12 weeks of boating here in New York has come to an end. All right, compose yourself. Compose yourself.
All right.